So in the second part of our class on International Human Resources Management, we will deal more directly with the first big issue that we raised before, which is the choice in terms of how to identify and staff managers in a global company. So usually there are two broad categories of staffing needs that face International Human Resources Management. One is recruiting, training, and retaining managerial and executives, so high value employees. And the other is non-managerial employees, such as blue collars or white collars office staff. Clearly, the two cases are quite different, and generally companies tend to prefer to run locally, for sure, for non-managerial positions. And therefore, the logics are the local logics. People are hired, paid on the basis of the local market when their roles are mostly operational. Things get completely different, though, when we think of executives and high-level managers. Most of the time, multinational global companies tend to favor their own country managers, particularly when they tend to centralize decision-making. At the very same time, there are firms instead who prefer to be more local. If we think of the framework we used before, clearly global companies will probably tend to be more favoring country managers, while transnational are going to be more connected to using OS or third country national. Usually there's a combination of the two things, also because of local regulation, by the way. So let's see the three possible options: parent country nationals, host country national, and third country national. Parent country national are resident of the international business home, so they were born in the country where the company has been founded and where it has its headquarters, and they are working as expatriate, which means they are sent to another country to work for their own company. Usually using PCN, communication coordination are easier because they speak the same language, they know people in the headquarters, and they tend to have the same culture and education that headquarters staff. But at the same time, there are some issues. So they might lack knowledge of local laws, and they might behave in non-appropriate ways. They don't know the social structure, the political process, so they can get into troubles, not being able to understand how the local business needs to be run. And they're very expensive because you're not moving only them, they're moving also the family. Finally, there are also restrictions in many countries, therefore you cannot move as many people as you want because countries are increasingly protective of the options for their internal labor force. Another option is to use host country nationals, which means you are choosing people there. Usually you do that for mid-level and lower-level management jobs, but there are cases where we use them also as executive, and it's typically they come with the different advantages from the parent country nationals. So they know the local laws, the culture, and the economic conditions, and usually they might be less expensive, unless you are operating in Switzerland from Italy, but they tend to be less expensive because anyhow you don't have the relocation expenses, however. But the complexity raises because they might not be very familiar with the company, its culture, its business practices, and might find it harder to relate to managers in the headquarters. Finally, third country national, that's for completely global companies. In these cases, they are, people from different countries operating there for another country global company. And, we do find them most of the time either in upper level or extremely technical and skilled position, for instance, in the oil industry. So TCN and PCN, so third country and parent country, are known as expatriates. So people who work in a country which is different from their native country. Usually, there are different models that companies use in deciding. So, for instance, some companies have an ethnocentric staffing model, which means that they will be granting favor and choose more favorably, parent country nationals, which will be in the higher level positions. But there are other possible models. Another is the polycentric staffing model, where the use of host country national will be higher. And finally, there will be the geocentric staffing model, which means I don't care where you were born. What's interesting to me is your competence with respect to the job. And that's a third possible model of staffing. And with this, we have covered one of the major areas of complexity with international human resources management, which is defining staffing at the global level. We will now move to analyze further aspects that make it so complex to run these kind of roles.